There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when love starts to die. Not with betrayal, not with a fight, but with a sigh. A woman sitting beside you, scrolling through her phone, her eyes distant. You ask if she's okay, and she says, "I'm fine." But something in her tone tells you she hasn't been fine in a long time. That's where unhappiness begins. Not in explosions, but in erosion. In the slow fading of appreciation. In the quiet war between comfort and craving. If you've ever felt that, the ache of trying to love someone who always seems slightly disappointed, this story is for you. Because what we're living through right now isn't just a relationship crisis. It's a psychological epidemic. A generation that has everything and yet feels nothing. Women, men, all drowning in the same invisible ocean of not enough. Not successful enough. Not loved enough. Not happy enough. But there's something particularly haunting about the female version of this emptiness. The way it hides behind a perfect photo, a curated smile, a filtered glow. The way she can have a good man, a good home, a good life, and still wake up feeling like something's missing. And every man who's ever loved a woman like that knows the weight of this silence. You try to fix it. Buy flowers. Plan dates. Work harder. But nothing touches it. Because you're fighting an enemy you can't see. An emptiness that doesn't live in the world. It lives in the mind. I've seen it too many times. A man standing in the ruins of a relationship, wondering what he did wrong. Not realizing he stepped into a fire that was already burning before he ever arrived. But this isn't a story of blame. It's a story of how an entire culture taught us to expect happiness the way we expect Wi-Fi. Instant, constant, unlimited. And how that illusion is killing intimacy. We were told progress would make us free, that technology would connect us, that self-love would save us. But what if it did the opposite? What if freedom turned into isolation, connection became comparison, and self-love became self-obsession? What if the pursuit of happiness has made us incapable of recognizing peace? Look around. We're surrounded by comfort, air conditioning, endless entertainment, 1,000 apps to fill every silence. And yet, no one can sit still. No one feels satisfied. We've mistaken stimulation for fulfillment, and we're paying for it with our sanity. For women, this discontent often hides beneath beauty and success. She's told she can have it all, and when all still feels empty, she thinks something's wrong with her. So she doubles down. New goals, new look, new man, new therapist. But the void only deepens. I once spoke to a woman named Claire. She whispered, "I don't know what's wrong with me. My life is good, but it doesn't feel good. Every time I reach what I thought was happiness, it disappears." That's the paradox of modern life. The closer we get to the ideal, the further we drift from ourselves. Our grandparents prayed for survival. We pray for stimulation. They built lives. We curate them. They endured reality. We edit it. And in that constant editing, we lose the ability to feel gratitude. the simplest, most human foundation of happiness. But let's be honest. It's not just her. Men are part of this too, exhausted from trying to fix women, trying to prove themselves, trying to matter in a world that treats intimacy like an accessory. We've both become architects of our own emptiness. We've built a culture that sells desire but starves connection, that glorifies freedom but punishes vulnerability, that teaches us how to chase but not how to stay. So the woman keeps searching for a feeling that can't be bought, and the man keeps trying to give what can't be given, until both forget that love was never meant to be perfect, only present. Maybe that's the truth buried under all this noise. We're not unhappy because life is cruel. We're unhappy because we've been programmed to expect constant happiness. And when reality fails to deliver, we call it failure. This isn't a gender war. It's a mirror held up to both sides. One that whispers, "You're not broken. You're just distracted." The women who can't feel content. The men who can't stop fixing. Both chasing peace in a world that profits from their restlessness. So before we talk about why women seem perpetually unsatisfied, we have to ask a deeper question. When did satisfaction itself become suspicious? Because this quiet epidemic of discontent isn't about gender, hormones, or social media. It's about a generation that forgot how to be still, a generation that confuses chaos for passion, validation for connection, and attention for love. And until we face that truth, we'll keep mistaking noise for meaning, and wondering why silence feels so unbearable. This is where our story begins, not with blame, but with the courage to ask, what if happiness was never the goal, but the consequence of peace? Every unhappy woman carries a story that didn't begin with her. It began with a house, a tone, a silence, a childhood where she first learned that love and pain could live in the same room. Before she ever dated a man, she was already learning what to expect from one. Before she ever asked for affection, she was already memorizing the rhythm of disappointment. You see, unhappiness rarely starts in adulthood. It's inherited, passed down like an heirloom nobody asked for. A woman doesn't just grow up. She's programmed. By her parents. By the environment. By every small moment when love was withheld. When her emotions were dismissed. When she was told she was too much. I met a woman once. Let's call her Melissa. She told me her father was a good man, just emotionally absent. He provided. He protected. He was never cruel. Just cold. She grew up mistaking his silence for safety. His distance for normal. So when she became an adult, she fell for men who made her feel the same kind of ache, distant, but familiar. That's the cruel trick of psychology. We choose what we know, not what heals us. We call it love, but it's really recognition. The mind chasing what feels familiar, even if it hurts. And it isn't just about fathers. Many women grow up with mothers who taught them unhappiness without ever saying the word. A mother who sighed through life. Who complained about her husband but never left. Who woke up tired, went to bed angry, and somehow taught her daughter that disappointment was simply the female condition. When you grow up watching that, it becomes your emotional language. You learn that love means criticism, that connection means control, that peace means boredom. So you repeat the pattern, not because you want to, but because peace feels unfamiliar and pain feels like home. Generational trauma doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it just whispers the same story through different mouths. A grandmother who stayed silent. A mother who complained. A daughter who leaves, but carries the same restlessness wherever she goes. And every time she says, "I don't know why I'm like this," what she's really saying is, "I've been living someone else's script my whole life." Modern psychology has a name for this: attachment imprinting. The first 5 years of life teach the nervous system what love feels like. If love came with chaos, her body will crave chaos. If love meant pleasing others to avoid conflict, she'll keep people happy even when it destroys her. If love was unpredictable, she'll confuse anxiety with passion. That's why many women fall for the same type of man again and again. Not because they don't see the pattern, but because breaking it feels like betrayal. Betrayal of their past. Betrayal of their parents. Betrayal of the emotional blueprint that says, "This is what love looks like." But here's where it gets even darker. Society doesn't heal these wounds. It rewards them. The anxious girl who learned to perform for attention becomes the woman praised for being driven and ambitious. The people-pleasing daughter becomes the perfect girlfriend, the one who never complains. The emotionally neglected child becomes the woman who prides herself on being independent. "I don't need anyone." But inside, the little girl is still there, waiting to be held, not admired. So when a man finally tries to love her, she doesn't know how to receive it. Because deep down she doesn't believe love can be safe. She waits for the withdrawal, the rejection, the silence, because that's how the story always goes. And when it doesn't come, she creates it. She picks fights, tests loyalty, sabotages peace, not because she wants to, but because peace feels suspicious, and pain feels predictable. Every time she pushes love away, it's not defiance, it's defense. Her nervous system is saying, "I know this hurts, but at least I understand it." And for men, this is where confusion becomes heartbreak. You think she's testing you. You think she's punishing you. But really, she's reenacting the only love story she knows. This is why understanding her past isn't about pity. It's about perspective. Because when you see her behavior not as manipulation, but as survival, you stop trying to fix her and start understanding her. That's where compassion begins. Not the soft, sentimental kind, but the grounded kind that says, "I see why you are the way you are." Still, compassion has its limits. Because even if you understand the pattern, you can't live inside it forever. Love can't heal what refuses to be rewritten. And that's the tragic truth. Many women don't want to heal. They want to be loved enough that they won't need to. But healing doesn't come from being loved. It comes from finally facing the ghosts that raised you. So, if you ever wonder why she pulls away when things are calm, why she starts arguments after moments of closeness, remember, she's not scared of you. She's scared of happiness. Because in her world, happiness never lasted. The heart repeats what the mind refuses to rewrite. She doesn't realize it, but every time she looks for peace, she's chasing a version of love that doesn't exist. A love that feels like lightning, never like light. Because the world never taught her that calm can be safe, that love can be quiet, that healing isn't supposed to feel dramatic. So she leaves one story after another, thinking the next one will finally feel like home. But she isn't searching for love. She's searching for the fantasy of it. And that fantasy, that glittering illusion of how happiness should feel, is where the next fracture begins. Somewhere between fairy tales and feminism, something broke. Girls were told they could be anything, but also that they should be everything. The dream sounded empowering at first, until it became exhausting. Because what started as freedom quietly turned into pressure. And what began as "you can have it all" slowly became "you must have it all." From childhood, she's been fed two opposing narratives. The first, that she deserves a love so powerful it will heal every wound. The second, that she doesn't need anyone to be whole. So she grows up torn between independence and intimacy, between the fairy tale and the fight. She watches romantic movies where love conquers everything, then scrolls through social media where perfection conquers love. And she starts building a fantasy that no real life can survive. Meet Anna. She was the kind of woman everyone envied, beautiful, ambitious, magnetic. When she married, her wedding looked like a movie. Every photo glowed, every caption was poetic. 6 months later, she sat across from me, eyes dull. "I don't know what's wrong," she said. "He's a good man, he loves me, but I feel nothing. Nothing." The word hung in the air like fog. That's the hidden epidemic. Not hate, not heartbreak, but emptiness. A feeling that creeps in after the dream comes true. You see, Anna didn't marry a man. She married a fantasy. A fantasy stitched together from movie scripts, Instagram reels, and half-heard advice from self-help podcasts. And when real life showed up, bills, routine, imperfection, it felt like betrayal. She mistook reality for failure. Because that's what perfection does. It poisons gratitude. The moment something becomes real, it loses its magic. The first months of love are always cinematic. Every gesture feels sacred, every word electric. But that intensity was never meant to last. Not because it's fake, but because the human heart wasn't built to live in constant fireworks. Love matures into rhythm, into silence, into something less exciting but infinitely deeper. But we live in a world that celebrates the spark and shames the stillness. So, when the fireworks fade, she panics. She calls it boredom or loss of passion, when in truth, it's the natural evolution of intimacy. This is what psychologists call the expectation gap, the distance between fantasy and reality, between what we imagine happiness should feel like and what it actually does. And the wider that gap, the more miserable we become. For men, this often manifests as pressure to provide. For women, it becomes pressure to feel. She's told she should feel butterflies forever, and if she doesn't, something must be wrong. But love isn't supposed to be a permanent high. It's supposed to be a steady warmth. And yet, modern culture keeps whispering, more. More romance, more success, more beauty, more validation. Even gratitude starts to sound like mediocrity. This endless pursuit of more isn't just exhausting, it's dehumanizing. Because when you live inside a dream, reality will always disappoint you. Anna isn't alone. Millions of women and men are quietly suffocating under invisible expectations. We were told that happiness was a checklist. Career, love, family, health, travel, money, balance. And when one box stays unchecked, the entire system feels broken. But life was never meant to be balanced. It was meant to be meaningful. And meaning requires trade-offs. To choose one thing is to let go of another. But modern culture has turned acceptance into failure. If you admit you can't have it all, you're accused of settling. So everyone keeps pretending, chasing an impossible standard, smiling through burnout, editing their way through despair. It's no wonder people feel numb. How can anyone feel alive in a world where authenticity is punished and comparison is constant? Social media didn't create insecurity. It industrialized it. It took human longing and turned it into an algorithm. Now, everyone's chasing someone else's highlight reel, and every scroll widens the wound of not enough. But here's the truth no one likes to hear. The problem isn't that life isn't perfect. The problem is that we expect it to be. The human heart wasn't built for perfection. It was built for connection. And connection requires imperfection. It requires the courage to see someone as they are, to stay when things aren't magical, to love even when it's quiet. That's why perfection is the enemy, because it teaches us to leave the moment we stop feeling enchanted. It teaches us to confuse peace with boredom and stability with stagnation. And in doing so, it kills the very thing it promises to protect. Perfection is not the standard of love. Presence is. So if you ever wonder why relationships crumble even when nothing is wrong, remember this. Nothing kills intimacy faster than the expectation that it should always feel extraordinary. Perfection doesn't just exhaust us, it blinds us. It keeps us chasing moments that look alive instead of ones that actually are. And in that blindness, a new hunger begins to grow, not for meaning, but for mirrors, to see ourselves reflected in someone else's envy, to feel real only when others are watching. That's how perfection quietly gives birth to comparison, and comparison becomes the quietest form of self-destruction. There's a loneliness that lives inside connection now. It's not the ache of being unseen, it's the fatigue of being seen constantly. Every scroll becomes a reminder that someone, somewhere, seems to be living better, happier, prettier, richer. At least that's what the feed says, but the screen doesn't show reality. It shows the performance of it, a hall of mirrors where every reflection whispers, "You're falling behind." Once, envy was a quiet sin. Now it's a lifestyle. We measure our worth by the applause of strangers and call it progress. You don't even feel the knife sliding in. You just notice the small cuts, how your mood dips after her vacation photo, how your partner suddenly feels ordinary after someone else's anniversary post, how gratitude evaporates, pixel by pixel. I met a husband once who said, "She used to be content. We laughed at small things. Now every time she scrolls, she finds something new to resent. Her friend's kitchen, her sister's ring, a stranger's smile. Each image became proof that her own life was somehow incomplete. That's the quiet heartbreak of our generation. We're all living decent lives that look inferior next to someone's filtered fiction. Psychologists call it relative deprivation. Our happiness is no longer measured by what we have, but by what others flaunt. Social media has turned that instinct into an algorithm. You can envy 1,000 strangers before you finish your morning coffee. Comparison feels harmless at first. A glance, a thought, a sigh. But it rewires the brain. You stop asking, "What do I value?" and start asking, "What gets likes?" Desire stops being born from the soul and starts being downloaded. For women, the cruelty is precision. The algorithm knows exactly where to strike. Body, beauty, lifestyle, love. Every post whispers, be more radiant, more successful, more adored. And the more she chases more, the further she drifts from enough. The mind wasn't designed for thousands of comparisons a day. Each image becomes a microdose of inadequacy until it calcifies into identity. She no longer feels less than. She is less than in her own narrative. Validation becomes oxygen. Likes become love. Attention becomes existence. Even when she reaches what she envied, satisfaction dissolves instantly. Because comparison has no finish line, it only updates the scoreboard. Today she wants to look like someone. Tomorrow she wants to live like someone. Next week she wants to be someone. That's the devaluation loop. The moment possession kills desire. Once she owns it, it loses meaning. The castle she built turns into another cage of expectations. Our grandparents compared themselves to neighbors. We compare ourselves to avatars. They saw reality. We scroll illusions. And when illusion becomes the standard, reality becomes intolerable. No wonder real relationships collapse under invisible pressure. How can a human heartbeat compete with a highlight reel? How can an ordinary man rival a fantasy that never argues, never ages, never disappoints? I've seen men exhaust themselves trying to outshine pixels, buying, proving, performing. But you can't compete with perfection that doesn't exist. Fiction always wins because it never sweats. The mirror doesn't just distort how we see others, it distorts how we see ourselves. We no longer ask, am I happy? We ask, do I look happy enough to be envied? That's the new currency. Envy. The more people covet your life, the more real it feels. Until one day, you realize you've built a masterpiece for everyone's eyes but your own. And the cruelest twist? The people you envy are just as empty. Their smiles are rehearsed. Their captions are confessions disguised as inspiration. We're all performing happiness for each other, while privately wondering why it doesn't feel real. No one's winning. We're all losing to an illusion. The price isn't only emotional, it's spiritual. Comparison kills presence. It strips wonder from the ordinary, turns gratitude into greed, intimacy into imagery. The more you look outward, the less you live inward. Peace feels foreign now, because we've trained our eyes to chase everything except stillness. We don't know how to look at what's ours without asking who's doing it better. The real tragedy isn't that we're unhappy, it's that we've forgotten how to recognize enough. The digital mirror reflects not our lives, but our longing. And the longer we stare into it, the more we dissolve, pixel by pixel, into the illusion of who we think we should be. But behind that illusion lies a deeper fracture. A war quietly unfolding inside modern women. The battle between freedom and belonging. Between self-sufficiency and surrender. Because when the world told her she could have it all, it never taught her what it would cost. And that cost is loneliness disguised as strength. Freedom. It sounded like salvation. For centuries, women fought for it, dreamed of it, bled for it. And when they finally held it in their hands, they mistook it for peace. But freedom isn't the same as fulfillment. It gives you options, not direction. It lets you choose where to go, but never tells you why you're going. And somewhere between, I can do anything and I have to do everything, something sacred was lost. The modern woman stands at a strange crossroads, strong enough to walk alone, but aching for someone to walk beside her. Taught to be independent, but wired to connect. Praised for self-sufficiency, but punished for needing love. She was told she could have it all, career, romance, purpose, passion. But no one told her that having it all would mean feeling like she's failing at all of it. Because every choice carries a shadow. Pursue success, lose stillness. Choose family, lose freedom. Chase love, risk vulnerability. And when she tries to balance everything, she becomes stretched thin, a rope pulled between ambition and affection, identity and intimacy, achievement and surrender. I once met a woman named Elise, a lawyer, 36. Brilliant. She said, "I thought independence would make me whole. But now I have everything I wanted, and no one to share it with." She paused, then whispered, "I don't know when solitude became my armor, or when it became my prison." That's the paradox of empowerment. It taught her how to protect herself from pain, but not how to let love in. We tell women to build walls called boundaries, but never teach them how to open doors called trust. We tell them to be strong, but not how to be safe in softness. And so, she hides behind independence, not because she hates love, but because she's terrified of losing herself in it. She watched her mother disappear into servitude, watched her father dominate or abandon, and vowed, "I will never need anyone." But somewhere along the way, that vow became a cage. Because needing isn't weakness, it's human. But in a culture that worships autonomy, vulnerability feels like humiliation. So, she keeps her armor polished and her loneliness private. She dates, but never truly lets anyone in. She performs intimacy, but it's conditional, controlled. The moment love demands surrender, she retreats, telling herself, "I'm protecting my peace." But peace built on avoidance isn't peace. It's numbness with good lighting. And the irony? While she's busy proving she doesn't need anyone, she secretly dreams of someone who will insist on staying. This inner war between independence and intimacy isn't just emotional, it's neurological. The human brain is wired for connection. Oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, all designed for bonding. But constant self-reliance floods the system with cortisol, the chemistry of isolation and control. She doesn't realize it, but the independence that protects her is the same thing that starves her. Because love and control cannot coexist. One requires surrender, the other, defense. Every time she tries to merge the two, she ends up exhausted. A part of her wants to be held. Another part flinches when someone reaches out. That's not strength. That's trauma wearing designer heels. And men feel this too, caught in the paradox of wanting to love a woman who doesn't know how to receive it. He feels like he's always knocking on a locked door, not realizing she welded it shut years before he arrived. So he blames himself. He thinks, if I were stronger, she'd trust me. If I were better, she'd stay. But it's not about him. It's about the part of her that fears dependence more than loneliness. Because dependence feels like history, and history was not kind to women who needed. So now, she calls it power. But sometimes, what we call power is just fear in a prettier dress. There's a quote I once heard. The modern woman is expected to be the storm and the safe harbor all at once. How exhausting it must be to never rest in her own softness. We admire her strength, her achievements, her composure, but rarely ask what it costs her to hold that pose. What it costs to be desired for her brilliance, but unseen in her breaking. Behind every "I'm fine" is a quiet ache, a longing not for rescue, but for rest. To put the armor down, to be met, not managed, to be loved, not applauded. But that kind of intimacy requires something radical in today's world: humility. Because true connection demands the courage to say, "I can stand alone, but I'd rather stand with you." Strength is beautiful, but it's not a home. And that's the tragedy. So many women have built fortresses of independence, but forgotten to leave room for anyone else inside. Freedom was never meant to isolate us. It was meant to make our connections chosen, not chained. Yet here we are, a generation mistaking solitude for self-worth and silence for control. But beneath that silence lies the deepest truth of all. The human heart was not designed to be self-sufficient. It was designed to belong. And that belonging, the courage to stay, to be seen, to depend without shame, is the one form of power the modern world still doesn't understand. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when independence and comparison finally collapse, when the pursuit of everything becomes the reason we feel like nothing at all. Some hearts are not broken, they're simply miswired, and no amount of love can reprogram what a person refuses to face. That's the hardest lesson any man learns. You can't save someone who's addicted to their own suffering. You can hold them, comfort them, fight for them. But if their pain has become their identity, your love will only feed the wound. Because the truth is brutal. Some people don't want to heal. They want to be rescued. They want someone else to bleed for what they're unwilling to confront. For years, men have mistaken this for devotion. They believe if they just love harder, she'll finally soften. But love isn't medicine. It's a mirror. It can reveal the wound, but only the wounded can close it. I've seen good men lose themselves this way. Men who started out strong and centered, but ended up apologizing for existing, walking on eggshells in their own homes, trying to fill a void that isn't theirs. They call it empathy, but it's captivity. Because when you try to fix what's unfixable, you don't heal them, you become sick too. Healing cannot be outsourced. It's an inside job disguised as solitude. And the longer you carry someone else's pain, the heavier your own becomes. There's a kind of quiet tragedy in watching two people destroy each other with good intentions. One trying to heal, the other trying to save. Both drowning in the illusion that love means repair. But love was never meant to be repair. It was meant to be recognition. I see you, and I choose you, even as you learn to see yourself. That's why the real cure begins the moment you stop trying to rescue and start learning to witness. To love without control. To care without caretaking. To understand that presence can heal more than effort ever could. I once met a man named Gabriel. He spent 5 years trying to make an unhappy woman happy. Therapy, vacations, gifts, patience. Nothing worked. When he finally left, he said something I never forgot. I realized I was loving her pain more than she was, and that's the moment healing begins. When you stop confusing self-sacrifice with love. We glorify endurance, as if staying through dysfunction proves purity. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not from her, but from the version of yourself that keeps settling for less. Because there's a difference between compassion and containment. Between holding someone and holding them back. Love can't bloom in rescue. It blooms in responsibility, when both choose to meet halfway, each carrying their own half of the weight. If she refuses that weight, let her journey be hers. Because staying won't save her. It'll bury you both. You're not abandoning her by letting go. You're returning her to her own power. You're giving her the gift of accountability. The same gift she has to give herself to ever feel whole. And the same goes for her. She cannot fix the man who uses her as a mirror for his unhealed shame. She can only reflect back his truth until he decides to see it. The cure for broken relationships is not better partners. It's deeper consciousness. Until we learn how to sit with our own silence, we'll keep expecting others to fill it. Modern culture doesn't teach that. It teaches replacement. Next partner, next high, next distraction. But every escape carries you in it. Every new beginning brings the same unhealed self. So stop chasing closure from others. Start creating it within. Sit with the ache. Name the pattern. Forgive yourself for not knowing sooner. And when you finally understand the difference between love and rescue, you'll see that real healing never looks like fireworks. It looks like peace that no longer feels boring. Because healing isn't becoming someone new. It's remembering who you were before the world taught you to perform. Rule, card. You can't heal in the same story that broke you. So close the chapter, not out of anger, but awareness. The person who left may never change, but you can. And that's the quiet revolution, not fixing others, but freeing yourself from the need to. Maybe that's what love was always meant to do, not save us, but wake us. To teach us where the boundaries of our empathy end and where self-respect begins. Because the real cure was never about changing anyone. It was about remembering that peace was never supposed to be earned. It was supposed to be chosen. And when you choose it, truly choose it, you stop fighting for love that drains you and start creating love that sustains you. You stop searching for happiness in broken people and start finding wholeness in quiet rooms, in steady hearts, in simple truths. That's when the war ends, not with victory, but with stillness. The stillness of someone who finally understands. You were never meant to fix the unfixable. You were meant to learn from it, to rise from it, and to never mistake chaos for connection again.